Hello. Continuing with my video series looking into the bad management practices of the Victorian State Government, this video looks into incompetence and one of its consequences. Again, all information in this video, with the exception of my anecdotal story, has been taken from publicly available news reports that are still available on YouTube. I will list my sources in the description below. To start, I'd like to give you a little bit of background. Bear with me, please. It might seem a bit unrelated, but it introduces the main issue. When I started as a middle manager many years ago, I realised that I needed to dress the part. I simply could not go to work and expect people to respect me if I didn't dress appropriately. I didn't have a good fashion sense, and when I went to Myers and David Jones, it was difficult for me to choose clothes. But I found a shop in Chapel Street, South Yarra, where the owner was simply brilliant. He took an interest in you. He wanted to know what you did, where you worked, and what position you held. He even asked if I was willing to let him choose the clothes that he thought suited me. I agreed, and it turned out that what he chose was far better than anything I could have ever put together myself. He was very good at what he did. He charged more than the department stores, but I thought it was good value overall. A few years later, this same man realised that he could make more money as an image consultant. He started to consult to government bodies and private organisations, advising on clothes, uniforms, dress policy and so on. He continued to sell clothes to the public, but on a smaller scale. He sometimes spoke about his work as an image consultant. In one conversation, he told me how clothing affects people. He mentioned the former US President Bill Clinton. And no, he did not consult to the US government. You may recall that Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky were in the news many years ago. Bill Clinton had an affair with Monica Lewinsky, but he denied it at the time. Bill Clinton at one time needed to get up in front of the US people and explain himself. It was Bill Clinton's choice of clothes that interested my tailor come image consultant. In one speech Bill Clinton gave, where he had to explain his relationship to Monica Lewinsky, Clinton wore a cobalt blue shirt and a gold tie. My tailor told me that research had shown that this combination of colours elicited a feeling of sympathy from the audience, and that was why Bill Clinton chose this combination for that speech. Now, at the time, I was a bit sceptical. I thought it a bit much that such careful consideration would be given to the choice of clothing, but I was soon to be proved wrong. A while later, Peter Costello, who was then the Australian Federal Treasurer, also wore a cobalt blue shirt and a gold tie when he was delivering bad news to the Australian public. So I started to think that there might be something in this. My tailor told me that other Australian politicians also wore the exact colour combination of shirt and tie when speaking to the public. I began to wonder, would politicians really go to such extremes just to try to elicit feelings of sympathy from an audience? I considered how my tailor was making a good living advising senior government people on such things. Obviously, he had a clientele that were prepared to listen and pay good money for his advice. There was clearly a market for such advice, so there must be something to it. Now, all this took place some 20 years ago. And I think politicians have become much more sophisticated since then. So let me give you some examples of what I think they do today. First, let's turn to Brett Sutton. He is Victoria's Chief Medical Officer. And let's look at this video.
We're in a really, really challenging phase of this pandemic. I've said before, the second wave, if we are going to call it, is very different to the first wave that we've gone through for a whole bunch of reasons. The population's affected, the fact that we're all rather fatigued, we're all a bit inured to the numbers. If we'd had a number of, close to 500 in March or April, we would have been staying in our bedrooms and not leaving the house. But some of the challenges in this phase as well relate to the complex environments where cases are occurring, that issue of insecure work. So I think it is absolutely challenging at the moment. So we have to reinforce the things that we know will make a difference.
So what is he doing? Those of you who study drama might spot what's going on. Brett Sutton is doing a form of emoting in this news clip. He's doing it either at a conscious or a subconscious level, but it is a type of emoting. So what is emoting? It's when an actor tries to portray an emotion or establish an emotional link with the audience. I think this is what our Chief Medical Officer is doing here. It's not exactly the same type of emoting that is done in film and on stage, but it is what actors do. Also, I should point out that this could be done at a conscious or subconscious level. Brett Sutton is very good at this, and it could come naturally to him. It could be that Brett Sutton is just trying to portray himself as a nice and likeable sort of person. This could be all this is. But if Brett Sutton is trying to do that, do you think you'd be more inclined to be more tolerant if he makes a mess of his job as a government minister, which some say he's doing? This could be a very modern take on Bill Clinton's and Peter Costello's plea for sympathy some decades ago. But Brett Sutton is not alone. It appears that other state government ministers have been taking acting advice from their consultants as well. Here is our health minister.
From last week, for example, we have had a very distressing situation at St Basil's in Fawkner. This is a facility that is very close, of course, to many members of the Greek community, and I know they have been particularly distressed to see the rising toll of deaths at that facility. I'm sorry. So from last week,
we see another little performance. She clearly is not a natural like Brett Sutton is, but still she gives it a shot. Most would just call this crocodile tears, but she is really trying to get sympathy from the audience. Now, even the Premier got into this.
I would not let my mum be in some of these places. Well, my mother is in her mid-70s. She has some underlying health issues, but she lives at home. Some of the stories we've seen.
We can see that acting and emoting do not come naturally to him either, but still he tried. I think you can see that the Premier and the Health Minister needed to be coached in their interview performances. Their attempt to make an emotional connection to their audience does not come naturally to them, but in both cases it is an appeal for sympathy. And note also that the Premier's performance was done the very day after the Health Minister's performance. So there was some concerted effort behind these apparent spontaneous outbursts. But the question is this: do you believe them? Could this be genuine as they want us to believe? You need to remember that these people were involved in a turf war just a few months ago, when they were deciding how the quarantine hotels were to be run. One minister did not want the police to manage the hotels. Another apparently did not want health professionals to manage them either. That is why we got the security guards and the complete mess that led to this COVID-19 outbreak. Just how much sympathy and compassion were on display while they fought each other over these issues and fought each other on behalf of their union supporter bases. Remember, the police did not want to manage the quarantine hotels because they thought it was babysitting tourists. And according to the Liberal opposition leader, the police demanded a curfew be put in place so their work would be easier. The whole quarantine hotel debacle was because of union infighting and self-interest. Instead of governing the state for the people, these ministers govern the state for the interests of the trade unions. From what I can tell, none of these people are in government because of their background or expertise. They are union appointees who won these appointments because of their trade union ties. From what we have seen of their performance and decisions so far, their primary job is to look after the interests of the trade unions and not the interests of the public. They are in these positions because they fought their way to the top. They backstabbed others, they climbed over others to get where they are. I cannot imagine a lot of sympathy and compassion are on display normally from these people, let alone when they fought over and worked out the management of the quarantine hotels. Me personally, I don't buy their pleas for sympathy. These people are hard-nosed trade union thugs. To me, they appear to be hypocritical at best and downright manipulative and dishonest at worst. So why this drama and tears in front of the news cameras? I think they made such a mess of their jobs so far, and they did it in full view of the public, that they were left with no excuses. All they could do is try to manipulate people's emotions to try and reduce the pressure they were under. They're in damage control right now. They are hoping that we forget the mess they made with the quarantine hotels and the BLM protests. They want us to think they are now working hard in our interests. The simple truth is that if they had done their job properly, then there would be no need for these manipulative pleas for sympathy from the public. They could instead be in front of the cameras pointing out the victories they had achieved because of their planning and management skills, and their clever and timely plan to get us out of this COVID-19 mess. But no. Instead, we see these shameful public performances where they appeal for sympathy, feign tears, feign whatever they can just for sympathy. Imagine if the managing director of a private company got up in front of his employees and used such manipulative tactics to try to get out of the mess that he had made. If the staff saw through his actions, which many would, he would be a laughingstock. I think the problem is that our state government ministers come from a trade union background. They are good at fighting with each other, good at climbing their way to the top, putting on a show and playing political games. But from what I can see, they have never managed anything in the real world. They've never managed people. Sure, they've fought with people, but they have never led people, never inspired people, never managed people. They have never managed any business where they are responsible for the outcomes. In real life, they've probably never managed a market stall. This is the situation we are in. We need real managers and real leaders, but we get performers, manipulators, people who threaten us. In my view, these people are not fit to manage anything, let alone a state government. And one final point. This ALP drama is now spreading into state. The Victorian ALP are now spreading their acting skills into state. In Queensland, the ALP Premier was accused of being cold-hearted and nasty by another politician because of her allowing a woman to cross the border to attend her father's funeral. So what did she do? She caught the Daniel Andrews give me your sympathy bug. Let's see here.
During this pandemic, I've lost loved ones as well. So I know exactly what people are going through. Okay?
See how she acts with subtlety and plausibility. But she does this on cue, just after she's been accused of being nasty and cold-hearted by another politician. I don't buy it. She did not become Premier by being a nice, sensitive, emotional person, particularly not in the ALP. They are usually trade union thugs who climb over other people to get to the top. I think there's very little room for emotion in their backroom factional fights for power.